Hello, and welcome to this episode of Mindset Mentoring for athletes, families, and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck, and this week we will once again be exploring the topic of mindset and mental health. And our guest this week has quite the story to share and how that has helped him in his role as a high school wrestling coach. So stay tuned for that.
Are you ready to elevate your success, whether you're a student, athlete, parent, or entrepreneur? Success Institutes offers transformational programs designed to unlock your full potential in every area of life. With webinars, masterclasses, and mindset training, we provide cutting-edge techniques to help you master your thinking. It's more than just knowledge. It's a life-changing transformation. Instead of paying thousands for a university course, our programs guide you in building the mental, emotional, and physical habits for true success and confidence. Starting with From Stuck to Unstoppable and Unchain Your Potential. We have something for everyone, including tools for families, like our Mindset Transformation Training and 10-Week Habits program. Plus, parents receive our book Confidence for Teens, a new chapter for family, free with just shipping and handling, to help guide their teens through personal growth. And whenever you enroll your family in any of our Mindset of a Champion training packages, you will get our bonus course on winning college scholarships, potentially saving you tens of thousands of dollars. Worried about time, cost, or even willpower? Our programs are designed to fit seamlessly into your life without overwhelming you. We help you prioritize effectively, leveraging the power of synergy and accountability partners to significantly boost follow-through and motivation, ensuring your team stays engaged. And compared to the cost of traditional education, what we offer is life-changing and far more affordable in the long run. If you're asking, will this really work for me? We believe it will. We even offer a satisfaction guarantee if you complete the program and aren't satisfied. Take the next step. Schedule your discovery call today, and let's unlock your full potential together.
Welcome back, and welcome to today's episode as we continue to explore the profound impact of mindset on teenage mental health. I'm excited to introduce Donald Duncan, a resilient leader and head wrestling coach at Central High School in Brooksville, Florida. Donald's journey through personal health battles, including ankylosing spondylitis and kidney disease, has not only tested his own limits, but also deeply informed his approach to coaching and mentoring young athletes. From his wheelchair to the wrestling mat, his experiences embody the power of perseverance and mental strength. Today, Donald will share how his struggles and recovery have shaped his coaching philosophy, particularly in nurturing resilience and positive mindset among his wrestlers. He believes in teaching life lessons through sports, emphasizing good character, academic excellence, and a passion for pursuits. His approach helps young athletes face their challenges both on the mat and in life, fostering an environment where failure is seen as a learning opportunity rather than a setback. Join us as Donald shares insights from his inspiring journey and practical strategies for supporting our youth. Donald, it's a pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So let's kind of begin with the easy introductory kind of question, and just tell us a little bit about your background. Maybe even beginning in high school, because again, you work with high schoolers. Some will be listening to this show. Kind of take us that and where wrestling kind of played into your life, and just kind of give us some of that introductory background to you.
All right. I graduated high school in 1991. Started wrestling in 8th grade, so that'd been like 1987 or 88, somewhere around there. Did it for 5 years. In school, I was labeled as a learning disabled child. So that presented a lot of challenges in itself, and wrestling just gave me a way to give me the confidence, I guess, and the understanding that, mental toughness is a mindset thing. And if you don't give up and you go at it 100% and you learn, then you can usually do better at things. And that's what was my approach. Is when I got into high school, ninth grade, instead of like cowering over into the corner like a lot of kids will do and the rest of the easy kids, I went right after the seniors and juniors. They beat up on me day in and day out, but I look at that as a learning opportunity, and I think that's what made the difference in my wrestling career in high school. I ended up placing second in our sections um, before I graduated high school. And during that time in high school as well is when my kidney disease started. I had strep throat, and it moved down and damaged my kidneys when I was about 16 years old.
Okay. So you have, as you kind of shared with me before the show, you had your own challenges, physical challenges, health challenges, some pretty serious ones. Now that obviously, health issues also help. They impact our mind impacts our body, right? There's that whole thing. You want to just kind of share a little bit about that journey and how that has really helped kind of shape who you are today, and how that impacts your coaching.
Yeah. It probably started around 2001-ish. I started asking myself at the end of the year, every year, is this the year I stopped working? The pain in my body, throughout my body, was just excruciating. Bending over, just doing anything labor intensive, just whipped me out day in and day out. I kept pushing through it until I ended up with a bone infection in my left foot in 2016. And that's kind of when I kind of said, okay, I give up. I just threw the towel in, stopped working, went on disability. That's when I also got my diagnosis for ankylosing spondylitis. By that time, because ankylosing spondylitis is kind of a hard disease to diagnose, I already had fusion and stuff in my back, and was in very good shape. With the bone infection, they couldn't give me medications to keep the inflammation down. So just getting out of bed on a daily basis was a real struggle. Not to mention walking or anything like that. I just was in really, really rough shape. When the home nurse came to take like my blood pressure and stuff, when they did the blood pressure cuff, I would actually winch at the pain. It was not a very good spot in my life. I was in a wheelchair from 2016, 17 to almost 2019, and very depressed, and this is going through a mental health process with a support person, and just talking about my limitations and just trying to wrap my head around what my new life might look like. Because my old life, I could not do anything about that anymore. Anything I tried just causes pain.
Yeah. So, there's a couple things there. You were there in a wheelchair, right? Kind of that. You said yourself depressed a lot for I think you said 3 or so years, right?
Yep.
What was that point where things began to turn around for you? Was there a specific decision? Can you pinpoint something where you kind of went, all right, something's got to change. I got to do something different. What was that moment? Can you pinpoint that?
Yeah, I can. That moment is a moment that I used throughout my life, and it relates back to my high school wrestling days. It's just that mental toughness that a wrestler develops over the course of his career. And when I reflected on my life, I knew I needed to get back to that point. I needed to find that spark of wrestling again. And that's when I started working hard and eventually got out of the wheelchair. Did aqua therapy to help me learn to walk again. And I'm not by any means a big athlete right now. I would say on a daily basis, I'm on the verge of it could go either way, back in the wheelchair, or it's a struggle to stay out of the wheelchair. Let's put it that way. Um, but reconnecting with wrestling gave me that fight back, that spark.
So, how did you go from there to, because you're from New York, you're now down in Florida, and you've become a head wrestling coach. What, how'd that kind of come about, and the whole process? Part of that must have been healing for you, right? There's that whole thing is helping you, and in turn, there are lessons here and things that you are trying to instill in your young athletes. Can you kind of talk about how that all kind of worked out, and what your kind of approach is, and how much do your athletes know about your past? Can you share some of those insights?
Yeah, I'm very open with my past, my medical conditions, and everything else. My wrestlers, as any coach out there can tell you, wrestlers especially, they always want to wrestle with the coach. They want to see if they can beat the coach. But with my condition, I cannot wrestle. If I wrestle, I might end up breaking the soft bone that's between my vertebrae, which would lead to more pain and stuff like that, and who knows what could happen. So I just have a policy where I do not wrestle. And the kids understand why. Um, they're very supportive, and the transition. So once I made up my mind, I needed to reconnect with that wrestling spirit. My first step was to get out of the wheelchair, and then once I was able to walk enough and move around enough, I went to my local high school where I graduated from. Just walked into the AD's office and said, I would like to coach wrestling. And he's like, well, we're not looking for anyone to coach right now. I said, I just want to volunteer. I am not doing anything. I'm sitting at home doing nothing. I want to give back to my community. And that's really where it started. I knew the head coach at Phoenix, who is Gene Mills. My two boys wrestled for Gene. I've known Gene for about 20 years. So once I started becoming a volunteer coach with Gene, then I also helped him out in his nonprofit club, wrestling club as well. And it just kind of took off from there.
So you're now a coach, and wrestling is combat sport, right? So there are obviously moments that young wrestlers are going through where I think in that kind of sport where self-doubt can creep in. It's a hard physical sport, physically demanding. So there's those aches and pains and all these kind of things that can factor into a young athlete's ability to perform at their peak or not. Are there specific things that you do to try to help that mental side of the game, right? That mental side when a young athlete is beginning to, doubt. They've had those setbacks. They may have lost some matches. They're dealing with some of those aches and pains. Are there specific things that you try to do to help them break those? And can you talk about what some of those strategies are that you utilize?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just a culture difference in wrestling, like in New York versus down south in Florida. In New York, we start kids out very young. We have pee wee wrestling, middle school wrestling, high school wrestling. And wrestling usually goes in family lines. Like I wrestled, my kids wrestled, my nephews wrestled, and I'm sure their kids will also wrestle. Down in Florida, unfortunately, there's not much pee wee programs out there. There's no middle school wrestling, so they don't get introduced to wrestling until high school. And that's the biggest thing I get from kids hesitant to try wrestling is, well, I don't want to go out there and fail, and when they approach me in like open house and stuff, I tell them, you know, to go out and wrestle and you fail. I said, I don't care if you win or lose. I said, as long as you do your best and you try moves that we are teaching, then we come back to the room and then you win. And when they hear that, you can just see a big relief on their face. It's not about winning. And that's where everyone's mindset usually is, especially with sports, is win, 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 win. And it's like it's okay to lose. Don't beat yourself up. As long as we come back and we learn and don't give up, then we really didn't lose. And that really puts a lot of kids at ease and makes them willing to try the sport.
Yeah, I think you had said that you grew. You haven't been the head coach very long, but in that from that first and second year, you've got a lot more athletes coming in, and this year it sounds like you have a pretty good group. You want to kind of talk about what maybe it is that the young people are seeing, and how you go about trying to get them to try this sport out. It's as you just said, right? There's no real tradition of wrestling, so they're coming into this in high school without having much experience. That can be pretty intimidating in itself. And then it's wrestling is a grueling sport. So how do you go about trying to encourage kids to take that step? Because that, I'm reading a book right now about the comfort crisis, and doing something new puts you out of your comfort zone to begin with. Doing something like wrestling can really push you outside that comfort zone, which is a wonderful thing to do, but it can be awfully challenging. So how have you gone about trying to build that, and how much do your athletes help in that kind of recruiting process?
Like, do open houses. I go and I sit in the cafeteria for a week before wrestling season starts, and kids come up and ask questions and things like that. I put out flyers, and what I find is at least 80% of the kids that try wrestling usually fall in love with wrestling. And I'm saying they fall in love like I did. It is where wrestling becomes their main sport. I had in Florida, the sports seasons kind of overlap a little bit. So if you do multiple sports, sometimes you'll run into like the season will overlap with another sport. And I've usually had a couple of girls and boys where they stop doing other sports because it's interfering too much with wrestling. I always encourage them to do as much as they can. But it's, like I said, at least 80% of the kids that fall in love, try it, they fall in love with the sport. The other thing that I do personally is, like a lot of coaches, you'll hear yelling and screaming, and their focus is more on win, 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 win. And that right there creates a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on the kids. I was lucky in my high school career because my coaches knew that, I was the type of kid that didn't follow peer pressure. I didn't care if I won or lost. And my coach knew that. So when it came to like where I got placed on the seating charts, he knew I wasn't like, oh, I gotta be number one. I didn't care about that stuff. All I want to do is go out and wrestle. And that's what I try to give to these kids is the ability to pressure free, not a hard practice, but a good practice to get them in conditioning. And through that learning process, they learn and they grow. And I think that's where I'm retaining a lot more kids is because the practices aren't so hard. Yeah, I remember in high school where the first 2, 3 weeks was so hard. Half the team dropped out. And it's like I want the opposite. I want more kids involved with wrestling. The bigger the team is, the better the team is, the more challenging opponents the kids have to wrestle in practice. It just my philosophy to coaching is totally different than everyone else's. My rules in wrestling are very simple. I tell the kids, be a good person, get good grades, do something you love, and be the best at it. Those are my 3 simple rules.
Yeah, those great rules to live by. So as a coach, right, and there's a lot of talk, a lot of data about this generation that we're seeing of high schoolers and the mental health challenges that they're facing, anxiety, depression being high up there. In fact, there's one data about the number of percentage of kids who get highly anxious just about the college recruiting process, right? It's like 75%. That's just one aspect that kids will begin to address as they move along in high school. Then there's a whole social media issue, and there's all of these different kinds of pressures that kids are bringing into their lives, into the school, into the sport arena. Can you, as a coach, right? You see this, you probably hear some of the things. Can you talk about what some of those biggest issues you think kids are coming in and that baggage that they're bringing with them, and as a coach and mentor, how are you trying to help them take the lessons from the sport, right, and transfer those into those other areas that are creating some of these challenges for them?
So with wrestling, um, you know, a lot of kids like look at an opponent and say, "Oh my God, he's strong," or he's got 8 years experience and I only have 2 years experience. There's no way I'm going to beat him. And I always tell the kids, it's just like in life. You can't get in that mindset of I'm going to lose because of this or that. You need to step back and focus and take it one step at a time. Get out there on the mat, try something. If it doesn't work, then you need to try something else. And it all comes back to the learning aspect. If you do the stuff you've learned and you know how to do, it's not like a lot of people think wrestling is a sport about strength. It's not. It's really about technique. If you have the technique and the endurance, usually you can beat a stronger opponent. And I see it time and time again. I was that type of kid that, I focused on the technique and my ability to outlast my opponent. And I won a lot of matches in my youth that I should have lost. So I bring that perspective to the kids. Whatever is happening outside of wrestling, in school, in your life, you just need to take a deep breath, step back, look at it. And if it's making you anxious, that means you need to learn. The more you educate yourself, then the scary things don't become so scary. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
Now, do you see the things that you're trying to address? And so you've obviously had, did you say this is your third year now, right there? So you've had some athletes now for 3 years. What are some of the big aha moments kind of thing that you've seen the impact of competing in athletics, the lessons you're teaching, and how some of these athletes are maturing. Is there anything that stands out for you? Any specific example that you can kind of go, yeah, man, Johnny there, right, or so and so. Is there any of that you could share with us?
I mean, the biggest thing I see, like a lot of kids are, is just immaturity. It's a maturity thing, and they run their mouths. They think they're better than they are, and that's what I love about wrestling as well. Is it puts these kids in their place. They go out on the mat, they talk crap, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're pinned. And because in practice, they don't really pay attention because they think they're better than they are. And it's just like a wake up call to them. It's like, doesn't matter how good you are at something, you need to learn. And I see that all the time. Is like, if you have like a kid that's athletically good and he goes out there and pins this guy all the time, and then he gets someone that is decent and has endurance and technique, eventually the technique guy will beat the athletically natural kid, because the natural kid always does the same move. He doesn't mature and learn different things, where the kid that fails is constantly learning. And when they learn, they improve.
Yeah, there are far more lessons, I think, that we gain from our, quote, failures, unquote, than our successes, right? If we know and are willing to reflect on that and try to pull those lessons out, that's one of the powerful aspects of journaling, right? And teaching people to journal and try to, in that journaling process, what were those lessons I needed to learn? How is that going to help me in the future? Just going through these questions, and literally, like, when I talk about journaling with people, it's not typing, right? It's handwriting is much more powerful, and it's that reflective process and getting things down on paper. It has a powerful impact. But if you aren't stepping back and trying to get those lessons out from those moments where you didn't achieve the desired outcome, you're kind of doomed to repeat those lessons over and over until you learn what it was you were supposed to learn. So, and athletics, I think, are just so incredibly valuable at teaching that. And as you said, the humility that can come, right? Somebody needs to be humbled a little bit, and athletics in general, but certain sports, wrestling, some of the combat sports, martial arts, boxing, baseball, where there's a lot of failure, can be great ways to teach humility to people, So as you are moving through a season, where does like goal setting and things like that come into play, and trying to get your athletes to not only have their own personal goals, right, but there's team goals. It's a team sport still. Can you talk about what that process is, or how you handle that? And because goal setting is really about the beliefs that you have around that. I mean, so many of us, we're coming up to New Year's Eve, right? New Year's resolutions. And the numbers are pretty staggering at how many people make goals, New Year's resolutions, and never come close to accomplishing them. In athletics, goal setting is pretty important. Can you talk about what you do in that realm, or and how you try to get that both individually and as a team to kind of work towards goals?
Yeah, in wrestling, goal setting is actually a lot easier than other sports. Um, it's just when we wrestle as a team, each wrestler has their own record, but the team also has a record. All right, so if they win by points, it's 3 points. If they win by more than 8 points, it's 4 points. If they do what's called a technical fall, it's where they win by 15 points, and that's 5 points. But if they pin the opponent, they get 6 points for the team. All right. So the goal for the team is to always pin our opponent. So when we practice and stuff, we focus on how we can get from our feet down to the mat and then pin our opponent. And there's many ways of doing that. And same thing if we're on top, we want to break the opponent down and pin the opponent. And if we're on the bottom, we want to get out, reverse, break the opponent down, and pin them. So pinning is the ultimate goal for the team. Last year, we focused heavily on pinning, and I had 7 boys on the varsity team, and we went up against another team, and all 7 of my boys pinned all 7 of the other team's guys. It was a great feeling. The team was very excited. It was the first time that everyone got a pin. So it was, a great morale booster. This year, the points have changed. In the past, takedowns were 2. A takedown is where you start on your feet and you take the opponent to the mat, was worth 2 points. This year, it's worth 3 points. And the other difference is when you get back points, when the guy's back is 45 degrees or more to the mat, you could get 3 points last year. This year, you can get 4 points. So I notice a lot of coaches are teaching quick ways to take advantage of the extra points. And my kids wanted to also take advantage of the points, but I had to step back and say to them, the ultimate goal is to pin every opponent. I said, why would we want to go out there and win by tech falls by points and only get 5 points for the team when we can get 6 points for the team? And they all understand that concept. So we continue this year focusing on, the ultimate goal, which is to pin our opponent as quickly as possible that we can pin them. So that's the team goal. Now for individually goals, all I tell them to do is I want them to do better than what they did last match. That's where the learning comes in. If you didn't win and you don't win, that's fine. Let's figure out what you're doing wrong and correct it over the week. And then when you go back and wrestle again, we'll try those new improvements and see how they work out for you. Wrestling is a little difficult as a coach sometimes because everyone has a slightly different style. I can show a way to do a move perfectly, and then a kid will take the move and skip something or butcher the move or whatever, but it still succeeds for him. And as a coach, you gotta step back and just encourage that and be happy because it's progress, And that's where I think a lot of coaches sometimes fail is they look at what the kid's doing. They may not do it exactly right. And then they try to correct them, even though they had a good result with it. And my philosophy is if they had a good result with it and it works for them, let's continue with it until they fail at it. Then let's address what they can do better.
And a lot of the goal setting type stuff I do is that we talk a lot about SMART goals and trying to set goals that are attainable and realistic. And I often talk about that can be such a challenge because realistic to who, right? Realistic, attainable. Who says something's attainable or not attainable? And I still remember one of my trainers years ago had said, what we try to look at is whether you have any history of doing something that's close to that goal that you have, and can you build off that? Because you don't want to just, never run before, go out and say, I'm going to run a 4-minute mile, right? That's just not, there's no history there of doing it. Not that you can't get there, right? But that's probably not where you're going to start at, right? That sort of thing. And trying to, get them into that success loop and as you just kind of said, build off each previous result, right? So you kind of have a idea in mind of where you want to go, and that is your end target, and then we keep working on trying to get to that end target, but you're looking at the previous result and then setting a new micro goal, trying to get you close to that result. It seems like setting goals is not in a formalized, structured component, something that's not really taught well in schools. Teams do a little bit better job of that, but I spent 30 years in public education, and I did some of this with my own students. But in general, you didn't see that taught to students at all, and goal setting is such a powerful thing to do. We are getting close to the end of our time. I do want to ask you, as you kind of envision your team and the work that you're doing with young people, what are some of those intangibles that you are hoping to see from the experiences with you and wrestling, and how that carries over? And I'm really kind of talking a lot about this idea of the building of confidence and how that spills over into like every area of your life, right? When you're beginning to carry yourself a little differently, it impacts other things. Do you have kind of a vision for what you would love to see your athletes when they come into your program, and what it would look like when they leave?
I actually am already starting seeing that. Like I said, in Florida, they don't start dressing to ninth grade. I have 2 captains that I made captains this year. They're only sophomores now, but from freshman to sophomore year, over the course of the year, they matured quickly, and they are really into wrestling. But more so, they built that confidence. Now when they look at an opponent, they don't go, "Oh God, he's a senior, and I'm going to lose." Because the guy's been wrestling for 4 years or whatever. They know, and they have the confidence to go out there on the mat, and do their best, and the outcome's what it comes. As these guys graduate and go into the life, I hope that confidence continues, and the lessons that I teach them in wrestling, come back and they realize, anything you do in life is about learning. I remodel houses. I didn't just one day say, "Oh, I'm going to remodel a house." You got to start with one project and learn one bit. And just like in wrestling, you just can't go out there and wrestle. You got to learn how to do a takedown. You got to learn how to do a half Nelson and pin the guy. Because if you don't do the half Nelson right and get the guy on his back, the guy's going to get off his back because you didn't do it right. And it's all these little learning pieces, which are, you can say, are goals. So once you learn the goal of a takedown or a couple takedowns, now you can start applying those because you know them. You learn them, and then you can build on that goal. And then your ultimate goal in wrestling would be obviously to get to states and win states. But you only can do that as if you keep improving yourself and keep learning. And same thing in life. When they get out of school, I hope they reflect back, and know that when they're in a real hard bind to think of the time when they're on the mat, on their back, and they're fighting for their life not to get pinned. That's the moment they need to remember, and then the success of getting off the back because they never stopped fighting, and then just go back and remember, once you get hit a hard block in life, take it back, break that hard obstacle up into small goals, and learn each step of the way. And then you'll succeed in life.
Yeah. Um, there's just so many important lessons that need to be purposely and consciously kind of shaped through all those experiences that we putting those kids through, whether it's athletics, whether it's music, academics, what have you. Trying to get them to have those beliefs, that are going to carry them forward. That's ultimately what your mindset is, right? It's the beliefs that you have about what's possible, what you can do, who you are, etc. And there's just, I love sports, right? So I obviously think sports are a great way to teach a lot of those things. But there's numerous other ways as well. I want to give you one last chance to just kind of, what sort of advice would you give any of those parents out there listening, if they even have younger kids like middle school age? Is there anything from a coaching standpoint, from your life experiences, all your battles, any sort of encouraging words or advice that you would give parents, particularly when we look at some of these mental health challenges that data is telling us, their kids are facing? What words of wisdom would you love to leave them with?
Well, I guess it goes back to what I, tell my parents now in wrestling, is when your child is struggling, step back, help them, have a conversation with them, and help them think about stuff that they need to learn or set goals. And set small goals with them and have them learn how to do each, to achieve each goal. When parents, pressure the kids take that pressure and it seems like they multiply it. So if the coach pressures the kid to win, the kid's going to say, I must win. And he's going to put so much pressure on himself and he's going to be so upset. And I've seen it time and time again where the coach is focused on winning, the parents are focused on winning, the kid goes out and loses, and then the kid says, I'm no good at this sport, I quit. And unfortunately, that's a kid that later in life, when they hit that pressure again, they're going to just say, I quit, because that's the easy way out. And you just got to try not to, as a parent, to put the pressure on your kid. If they like something, encourage them to do it, but don't pressure them. Especially like in sports, it's all about winning. And I even had that pressure from my family growing up. Is my cousin lived in another school system, and when they found out that I was wrestling their guy, I had to go through months of torment of, oh, this guy is going to beat you, and then, but I was like I said, I was the type of guy that was quiet, but I was confident. So, and I take each match as a new opponent. I don't do research into my opponents. I just go out there and do what I need to do, and I wrestle my match. So, but of course, that pressure gets to you after a while, and you just gotta step away from it and not focus on the pressure and just do what your training's been taught to you, And so, if you're a parent, your kids go out for sports, they don't do so good, just keep encouraging them, and get interested in what they do, help them learn. And that's the biggest thing they can do to boost the confidence of their kids.
Yeah, yes. Well, I do appreciate you sharing your story, sharing your insights, how you are applying that with your work with your athletes and the young people. I greatly respect all that you're doing. It's real important role that coaches, educators, that we have with the young people coming through. So greatly appreciate you taking the time out and sharing all that. So once again, with this episode, we got some real insights. Somebody, Coach Duncan, who had his own battles and with health and all. Now he's using those experiences. He's helping to shape young people and learning to deal with the challenges of life, teaching lots of life lessons through wrestling. And, many of you may not know, but the data out there is quite alarming in that in 2023, it's about 10.5 million teenagers had experienced persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And hopelessness is a very dangerous feeling to be having persistently. And we parents, we will spend literally tens of thousands of dollars on our children, trying to help them get into the right college, going to all these athletic camps and testing and trying to get all the right AP classes and doing all these things to help our children, not only succeed in high school, but college and beyond. But the one thing that is probably most important in all those areas is the mindset that your children will develop and have. And we spend virtually nothing on that. So, I encourage all of you, those of you who are listening to this, I will actually make available a mindset strategy session that I usually charge $175 for a half hour. Just because you're listening to this, I will waive that fee. And in a strategy session, we are going to talk about what some of these issues are that could potentially be keeping your child or even yourself from reaching your full potential. What are some of those beliefs that may be holding you back, the negative emotions you're holding on to? And we'll explore those and have a little conversation about exactly what that means and what we've found and strategize around that. In order to get that special, all you need to do is go to CoachChuck360.com, CoachChuck360.com. There you will see a Contact Me icon. You click on that, send me a text with your first name, last name, best email, podcast gift, and when I get that, I will send you a special, unique calendar link where we can try to get a strategy call. No obligation, just a conversation, kind of digging in, looking at what some of those challenges may be, and we will then kind of give you a roadmap, so to speak. So until our next episode, I wish you all well and take care.